Welcome to Here Where You Belong, your go-to podcast for exploring belonging with your host and belonging expert, Dea Irby. We are thrilled to have you join us. Together, we'll dive into the depths of what it means for each of us to find our own place in the world, whether it's within our communities, our relationships, or within ourselves. Today's episode is meant to inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. So grab a cozy spot and settle in. Welcome to Here Where You Belong.
Hello, awesome belongers. Welcome home to Here Where You Belong podcast. Today's guest believes there is nothing that can happen to you that God won't make something beautiful out of. I'm Dea, your host. Get ready to be inspired and blessed. Help me welcome our guest today, Tony Stoltzfus.
There
Hey,
you go.
Tony. Did I say
Thanks.
it right?
Yeah, you did fine.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about our guest. Tony is a best-selling author, multiple books, I just want to add, speaker, coach, and one of the founding voices in the Christian coaching movement. Over the past 25 years, Tony has coached hundreds of leaders, trained thousands of coaches, and written 21 books, told you, that have been published around the world, including the best-selling Coaching Questions. I bet that's helpful. But what makes Tony's story so compelling is his passion for transformation. Since his 20s, he has intentionally built communities where people can experience authentic relationships, personal growth, and lasting change. He believes that transformation happens through two essential ingredients: meaningful experiences and meaningful relationships. Tony is also the author of Heaven, Experience the Extraordinary, an imaginative exploration of heaven that invites readers to see God's goodness in a whole new way. And I'm excited about this one, How to Read the Bible Like a Human Being.
Yeah, there we go.
And he's holding up a copy of that. A fascinating guide to bringing scripture to life through the power of visual imagination, using that part of our brain that we don't usually use. Through life's challenges, losses, and unexpected turns, Tony has discovered that God's presence is real, his love is personal, and his ability to redeem our stories is greater than we can imagine. Wow, spectabulous. Tony, any additions, subtractions, or corrections?
Yeah, I don't know if I've been buttered up like that for a long time.
The pressure's on. Well, you are bringing to the table something spectabulous, and I wanted you to feel honored.
Okay, thank you.
And as you know, this is about belonging.
Mhm.
And I've invited you here to tell us your story of belonging, either how you found belonging, maybe you had it, lost it, found it, or never had it, then found it, and how you have created belonging, because you've created a lot of communities and you know relationships are important. How have you created that for other people?
Okay.
You're in the spotlight, take the mic.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with a couple early stories about my own belonging journey, and then we can dive into some of the hows. Um, One thing that really shaped me was we moved a number of times when I was a kid, and when I was going into eighth grade, we moved from a university town to a small town in Iowa. And the school system we moved to was about a year behind the other one. And so I was going to have to go through all the classes again. And my parents asked if I could go ahead, and the school wouldn't let me. So what happened was I was the nerdy new kid, in eighth grade who knew everything. And the teachers pretty quickly figured out what was going on. And so they left me alone. So I would sit in class all day with a book in my lap. And I read an average of one book a day through the entire school year in class. But of course, this greatly endeared me to my, eighth grade compatriots, and I pretty much had no friends. And
Wait, time out. What kind of books did you read?
oh, history
Of
and yeah,
course. It wasn't
Whatever
comic
was
books,
interesting.
so you know.
No, no, I was reading serious books. So I probably learned more that year than in the other years of school where I was in the classes. But anyway, um, so one of the things that did was it drove me to God because I wasn't getting any of my needs met socially. And so I took my closet in my bedroom and I put old sofa cushions in the bottom and pasted C.S. Lewis quotes up on the wall, and that was my prayer closet. And I used to go out. There was a truck manufacturing plant not too far from us, and they had a back lot with the broken down, So I would go out there at night and climb up on top of a truck and lay there on the grating and look at the stars and think about God. And so the experience of being alone socially was one of the things that became foundational in my relationship with God. Um, if you fast forward maybe 5 years or so, I'm in college and finally finding some relationships with like-minded people. On the last day of school, my best friend said he wanted to talk. So we go out and walk. There was a railroad that went through the middle of campus. So we went out and walked on the railroad tracks, and he hems and haws around for a while. And finally he turns to me and he says, "Tony, you're too intense for me and I don't want to be around you anymore." And so I go home for the summer and I'm like, God, what's wrong with me? Um, and this gal I knew invited me to a church meeting out. It was a group from the college, but they were meeting not far from my home. And I went just because I was interested in her at the time.
Oh, of course. There's
Yes.
always that draw.
So so I go into the meeting and the leader is he's speaking and affirming different people and their gifts and stuff, and he doesn't know who I am. He's never, because I came in late, I haven't been introduced or anything. Comes over to me, looks at me for a minute, and he says, "Tony, you're a real intense person, and this is what God has to say about that." And that of course got my attention because that was the word that was totally on my mind. So I ended up joining this group, and for the rest of my college time and the years afterward, um, like me and my best friend started a guy's house and we had 6 guys living under the same roof. And my wife to be this evolved into a church during those years, but they had a girl's house about a block from where the guy's house was. So
Oh,
she was running one and I was running the other. And
that's
her
pretty.
house was this huge mansion that like 15 people were living in. But the newel post at the bottom of the stairs came off. And so we would leave each other love notes inside the newel post. But I finally found a group of people that wanted to be as serious about God as I did, and I just threw myself into it. And that was really where I learned community and belonging. It was a Mennonite group, so there was a strong ethos for, community and that kind of stuff already. But up until I was 30, I lived more years in intentional community households than I did outside of them. Uh, so yeah, that was how I came to learn belonging. And then I'll give you one other story. So this church, about what would it be? Maybe 6 years after I joined it, blew up. And we grew from 350 down to 80. You know, all my friends left. Just terribly painful time. And when everyone is hurting, I was a worship leader. It's a wonderful time to lead worship when everyone's hurt. It's like dragging a ball and chain. But we finally nursed the thing back to basic health, but it wasn't the same as it was before. And meanwhile, I'm married and I have little kids and I have a job. And I could feel inside myself that I was holding back. I wasn't giving 100% like I was before. And this was one of the first times in my life that I remember praying one of what's become my favorite prayers. Um, God, do in me the things I can't do for myself. Because I didn't know how to get over that hump of giving myself deeply. And one day I was in worship and God spoke to me and he said, "Tony, there's one degree of glory it brings me if you think it's going to work and you'll trust me. But there's a whole nother degree of glory it brings when you know it's not going to work and you'll still trust me." And that was my obstacle, that before I just believed we'd be together forever and everything would turn out wonderfully, and it didn't. And now I knew that things fall apart. And Jesus was meeting me in that and saying, you can join the broken thing with your whole heart, knowing that it's broken because I can heal you. And so what came out of that for me was a new understanding of relationship, that I don't need a year to form a deep relationship if I'm willing to take all the risk of being vulnerable up front. So if I'm willing to come in and say, yeah, here's my struggle right now. I live most of my life for significance, and God is saying there's a whole different life you can lead. And I'm trying to say, okay, and I'm finding all these places in my life where I've, done something for significance and erase joy. But if I can talk honestly like that about myself, people will meet you most of the way. And you jumpstart the relationship with this huge boost in depth. And so the way I would say it now is the key to belonging is transitioning from a mindset of, I don't want to get hurt, so I will be careful in my relationships and only trust people who are trustworthy, to a mindset that says, I'm going to give myself as a gift to the people around me, knowing that I will get hurt sometimes, but that Jesus will heal me. And my trust is not in my ability to create a circle of friends that will never hurt me. My trust is in that I'm going to live openly with everyone and know that God will meet me in it. So that was a big step in my belonging journey.
That's beautiful. I mean, that authenticity,
Hmm.
vulnerability is is powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, how do you do that? Build community, build belonging in a community else, some of the how-tos. Or are there a list of how-tos if all we do is just each one of us determines to be vulnerable?
Well, I think in your personal relationships, making that belief shift that I am most people approach authenticity like this. I'll take a little risk and see if it's safe. And then maybe you'll take a little risk and I'll take a risk. And 2 years later, we've reached the place where we can talk about something that we really care about. And what I'm saying is, I have switched from that self-focused, I don't want to get hurt thing to a giving focused. There's an opportunity for us to have a great relationship, and I know how to get us there. So I am going to be the one who's willing to take the risk of being open, because by experiences, 90 some percent of the time, people will meet you at least part of the way there. And something much better happens than if you had done the time and trust little dance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's really important. Um, but people, another fun story, I was leading worship in this little church, and I had a band that just was
Define little.
50 people.
50?
Yeah, including kids.
Little.
Yeah, up in the mountains in Virginia. And the band was just uncommitted. We would have practices, and there was once when no one showed up for the practice. And I was like, okay, things got to change here. Why do people commit to stuff? Now we could make rules, you can't play on Sunday if you don't come to the practice. We could give people, we could pay them, we could give them incentives. But the choice that I made was, we set up a retreat. And a lot of these people had never been on a church retreat before. So we got a camp, and these are adults, like
Right,
with
right.
families, some of them and all. So we got a camp and we went away for a day and a half. And the guys raided the girls' cabin, and and we did teaching about gifts and personality type. But after that weekend, um, a year went by and no one missed a practice that didn't call me beforehand and say, I can't be there because, we're out of town or something. But they went from zero commitment to, I'm always going to be there, because it became a community. And you do it for the people that you're with. You do it for the guy in the foxhole with you. Um,
Also, you don't want to, it's FOMO. You
right.
don't fear of missing out. Wait,
Yeah.
they're going to go there and
These are my people
practice
and
and
I
have
want to
fun.
be with them. Yeah.
That is an awesome, awesome lesson. Yes, and a great story. Um, any other comments about helping build community?
Well, you mentioned that truism that I discovered. I was teaching at a seminary, and I used to ask groups of students in seminary, what are two things that transformed your life that afterward you were never the same? And there were a lot of mid-career people. They weren't just, 20-year-olds. And I would have everyone jot down two things. And then we'd make a list on the board. And I'd say, okay, how many? I've got 30 people in the room. How many was it a sermon? Zero. How many was it a seminar? Zero. How many was it a book? Maybe one. We'd go through all the ways that church tries to change people and get zero. And then I'd say, okay, for how many of you was this a difficult experience or some adversity you had to overcome? Every hand goes up. How many was it a significant relationship? Every hand goes up. So what I decided was because I've done a ton of training, if people are going to change, they need experiences and relationships to change. Outside of those things, they gain head knowledge, but they don't. So for instance, we took our training groups and I did a lot of 3-day training workshops. At the beginning of the workshop, we put people in groups of 4s. They stayed in that group the whole workshop, and every session they practiced a technique or something on each other, sharing their own stories and being coached. And then at the end of the workshop, I had them sit down and say, okay, we're going to meet for the next 8 weeks and practice. So set up your schedule, and these groups would meet. And we didn't do any oversight or arm twisting or anything. But because they had bonded during the workshop and they had bonded around a deep level of conversation, they kept meeting on their own. So people have a tendency to bond around their first contact. So what we did was we would create these heaven rooms in the workshop with actors and staging and lighting and original music. And on one of them, what we did beforehand is we had people give us the names and addresses of like 5 close friends. And then we had them send us their 3 greatest accomplishments. And when they got to the heaven room, they got affirmations from their closest friends that we had them write in this heaven experience. And then we stood up in front of everyone and read their greatest accomplishments to the group. And then we had this song called Hero of Heaven. You're a hero of heaven, a star among stars. Papa is so proud of you. And we'd all sing that song over them. But the goal was if I can have you bond on this deep experience of affirmation and belonging and love, that's the way you'll relate for the next 3 days. We're not going to bond around the weather or where you're from or what your church background is. We're going to bond around meeting Jesus at a deep level.
I totally love that whole impact and how it can change someone. We could keep talking about this, but we need to take a quick little break here and be right back with my fabulous guest today, Tony Stoltzfus.
Yep, you got it.
Hey there! Isn't my guest amazing? So glad you joined us today. In this world that often feels disconnected, building community and fostering belonging are essential. That's why I created this podcast, to bring inspiring people to you, to encourage you to create that sense of belonging and community, no matter where you are. If you're being blessed by my guest, and we have some more, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. You know who needs to hear this. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. Now, back to our amazing guest. And we are back with my fabulous guest today, Tony Stoltzfus, with my 3 favorite questions. Everybody that comes on gets to answer these 3 questions. And I know that this first one will be quite a challenge because you could answer it with so many things, but what do you consider is your greatest accomplishment?
I would probably say it's sort of a lifelong thing, so I'll sum it up in one story. About 5 years ago, there was a forest fire in our area and our house burned down. So we lost, we had 15 minutes warning to get out. We had just flown in the day before. So we escaped with a suitcase of dirty clothes that we hadn't yet unpacked each, and our computers and our pets. Um, but every memento, every video of the kids, the furniture that I had made, because I was a custom furniture designer,
Oh,
we had a hand carved poster bed in solid cherry, all that burned to the ground.
oh,
All my glass art melted. Um, and that was the fourth most stressful thing that happened in my life that year, the fire.
that year?
Yes.
Only the fourth?
Yes.
Dare I ask what one, two, and three were?
Oh, they were all family stuff, mental health issues. Child was suicidal. My daughter quit speaking to me. The 2 days before the fire, we had the conversation where your child tells you everything that you did wrong as a parent, you know?
Oh, yeah, because now they know so much about how to be a parent.
So, and how you've hurt them, and yes. Um, so the thing that I'm proud of is, you know, after all that was happening, there was a period of time where I couldn't work. We ended up giving our ministry away because I just couldn't do it. We gave it to our trainers. Um, I took a sabbatical for a year. And a lot of my prayer in those times was, Jesus, I know I could talk to you whenever I want and you'll talk back, but I don't even feel like talking to you right now. I don't want to be around people because I feel let down and betrayed. I just want to be all by myself. And Jesus would say, it's okay, trust the process. And the beautiful thing, it took several years to get through all that, but the outcome of it has been just this deep knowing that me and Jesus are okay. And it's not based on my performance. It's not based on me being a good boy. That was always my go-to defense mechanism, was being a good boy.
Mhm.
Um, Even if I'm not doing that, I sort of equate it to Job. I filmed a video series about Job in front of the shell of our burned down house. But Job is the story of a guy who was afraid of God. He sacrifices regularly for his children, not because they did something wrong, but just in case they might do something wrong. He's anal about this. And his righteousness is his integrity. Regularly throughout his moaning, I will die before I give up my integrity. I can't agree that I've done something wrong because my integrity. And his wife, who understands the problem and is totally frustrated with it, is, Job, just curse God and die. Why do you keep hanging on to your integrity? And she's not confronting him in a particularly healthy way, but the
Right.
spouse usually knows what the problem is. And the beautiful thing in Job is at the end of the book, Job comes to the place where he realizes he's totally blown it and he's completely in the wrong. And in that moment, God loves him and accepts him. And the story of Job is about, through suffering, a man gaining the thing that he always longed for but could never attain, peace with God. And that's Job is not about a guy who was really good and bad things happened to and somehow he survived. It's about God giving someone the desire of their heart, even when they had to lose everything to gain it. And I
Hmm.
can really identify with that because that's how I feel about the fire.
How long ago was the fire?
I think 6 years now. So,
And the ministry you gave away is still thriving
yeah,
somewhere?
it's called Leadership Metaformation. They train coaches to coach the heart, and they teach people the questions for Jesus method, which is do you want me to tell you what it
Sure,
is?
sure.
So, what I discovered one day was I had been praying all the wrong things for 50 years. Um, my prayers tended to be, God, what do you want me to do? What's your will for my life? In this situation, what decision should I make? Oh, I did something wrong. I'm sorry. But my prayers were all about doing. And I started praying prayers like, Jesus, what do you like about me? Or, Jesus, what were you thinking when you made that flower? And my percentage of answered prayer it went up like 1,000%. And I was like, oh, this is what you've been wanting to talk about all along. I kept asking questions about what we were supposed to do together, and you just wanted to be together. And we have one of the cores to how I've taught coaching is that there's a set of deep desires that motivate our behavior. Belonging is one of them. Love, belonging, peace, significance, security. All our behaviors tend to come from, most people have one or two or three of those, that everything goes back to those things. Like for me, peace and significance are the big things. And goodness and peace sort of go together. Um, but what I realized is James 4 talks about what causes wars and fightings among you. It's your desires, your hedone, that are at war in your members. You desire epithemia, which is the word Jesus uses for his desires when he says, with great desire, I've desired to eat this Passover with you. So desires aren't bad. They can be hedone that you spend on your pleasures. But the problem isn't that you desire something, it's that you ask wrongly. So what's it mean to ask rightly? You don't have because you don't ask. And in the context, you don't have the deep desire for, say, belonging because you don't ask God to give you belonging in your relationship with Him. You go out and try to get your belonging need met by getting married or going out drinking with your buddies or whatever it might be, but you're in charge of getting your own desires met. And the cross comes into that of saying, I have to give up trying to find a relationship or a thing or a new motorcycle or a computer or a trip to Tahiti or whatever that's going to fill my desire. And I need to learn to go to God and ask Him for that. So the questions for Jesus method is, once you identify the desire, like, oh, what's something that I want? I want this nice cooling blanket that keeps me from sweating at night that I just found on the internet because I'm always waking up with my head drenched, you know. Um, what's the desire there? Well, sleep. I've had a sleep disorder for years. Sleep has always been a challenge for me. And the challenge is to be at peace enough to go to sleep. So the blanket is really about peace. So before I buy the blanket, I need to go to Jesus and say, Jesus, if I never get a cooling blanket, how are you going to be my peace anyway? And I want to root my peace in my relationship with Him. And the power of the question for Jesus prayer is it's an experiential prayer. You don't just say, Jesus, thank you that you're my peace, and go on your merry way. You say, Jesus, tell me, how are you my peace today? And you get an actual answer. And the experience of the rhema, the experiential word, feeds your insides. Faith comes by rhema, by experiencing God speaking to you. And so when you experience Him meeting your desires, then you don't need to go out and sin to get them met. Um, so when I coach people, we may identify a problem, but very often then we'll ignore the outward manifestation of the problem and say, okay, there's an underlying desire here. So we're going to focus on meeting Jesus there. And a lot of times the impetus to do the bad things sort of goes away. It's wonderful. And it's really fun to work with change with people when the way you're working with it is not self-denial and discipline, but is experiencing Jesus giving your heart what you've always longed for. Um, so that was a long explanation, but
No,
that's
but
what I
it's
do.
very valuable, very valuable. It's transformational. Oh, wait, isn't that what you've been doing with people?
So a
Ah,
belonging prayer could sound like, Jesus, tell me again, how do I belong to you? Or Jesus, why did you choose me to be on your team? We've all experienced the being the last one picked, but you
right,
picked me. You went out of your way. So why'd you do that?
right.
What do you see in me that made you say, I want this one to be part of my family?
Mm,
And Jesus fills in those blanks that gnaw at us. It's beautiful.
wow. Nice answer for the first question. We have two more.
Ah!
The second question is, what makes you feel like you belong? You kind of have already answered it in a lot of ways, but what
Yeah.
would you say makes you feel like you belong?
I don't have trouble going out and making authentic relationships. So if I think about belonging in a group or an organization, for me personally, a lot has to do with being known for who I am and being able to make a contribution as who I am. Um, so
That that is being seen and known and heard, basic.
yeah,
Acknowledge that you exist. Too many people aren't.
yeah.
Going back to the other question, I thought of everybody saying, "What's your big why?" But I've heard that maybe the question should be not why are you doing this for what result, but who? Not your why, but your who. Who do I want to be
Uh-huh.
instead of
And
your why?
even, okay, like 2 years ago, I was in Maui visiting my son, and we're up on this road, this gorgeous road. Oprah lives on it with a fantastic view of the ocean and the mountains. And I'm walking along, and God says to me, "Hey, Tony, you've been living for significance, and there's a whole other way of life that you can have if you want it." And I was like, "Okay, I have no idea what you mean, but um, but I think I've realized in the coaching movement, we're big on life purpose and discover your destiny and all those things. The thing that we've done wrong is we haven't led people to the cross in the midst of that. And there's this dynamic where you have these deep desires like belonging that drive you. Those have to go to be surrendered and met in Jesus. And once they're founded in Jesus, then he can start to give you things that go with that desire. But if you don't surrender your desire, asking, you know, a real graphic example is gals who really want to get married. They think their dreams for love and belonging and all that will get married. So they need to get married. What happens to people who need to get married? They marry a jerk.
First one they can corral.
Yes. And so your desire when it doesn't go to the cross will actually work against you and keep you from getting the thing that you really long for. So she marries a jerk and he abuses her instead of loving her, and he drinks instead of paying attention to her. And everything she wanted out of that marriage, she gets the opposite. And so I think living for a purpose, you first have to bring that to Christ
Hmm.
and say, Jesus, if I never do anything significant again. Like I wrote this book. Okay, I spent 3 whole years full time doing research for this book. I spent 4 months in Israel. We dropped 30 grand just on traveling to Israel. And when I was all done, Jesus said, "Okay, I want you to not promote this." Um,
The reading the Bible like a human being.
yes. And so I didn't. And so it's been my worst selling book by far. Um, but I need to experience letting go of the need to be significant and leave a legacy and all those kinds of things. That's what God's agenda for me in retirement is, to be content. And that's not what I envisioned. I thought I was going to work as hard as I could, as long as I could. And he had other ideas.
Did he tell you to retire?
Yes, I was in Israel and it was the week before my 64th birthday. And he just spoke to me and said, "Next week's your birthday and I want you to retire." And I was like, "I've been self-employed for 25 years. What does that mean?"
Yes. How do you
So I
retire
spent,
from self-employment?
say what?
How do you retire from self-employment?
Yeah, my
Turn in a
office is in my
resignation
house.
letter to yourself?
Yeah, so I struggled with it for a while. Should I do this? Should I not do this? How much is too much? And finally, I'm like, "Jesus, what?" And he's like, "Well, retirement is whatever you want it to be." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm making this way too hard." So now I coach friends and family only, people that I know, and it's all free. I don't charge anybody anything, and it's wonderful. Um, I'm teaching 3 classes a week because these are groups that have been together for 3 to 5 years and have helped me pioneer this how to read the Bible like a human being thing. So I meet with them 3 times a week and we have great fellowship around the scriptures. And I write new lessons that probably few people will ever see, because to be able to sit out on the deck and spend 20 hours just studying one paragraph of the Bible is just a blast. Um, I have all these obscure books about diseases in the ancient world and social science takes on the parables, and yeah, I'm
So
having fun.
you've returned to the eighth grade where you spend every day reading a book.
Yes, yes.
That's fun. Okay, great answers. Loving the conversation. We're to the third question.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite quote? I'm sure you have lots of them, but what did you choose for your favorite
I
quote?
had to think about this for a while. I came up with the ministry one. Was ministry would be great if it wasn't for the people, um, which is what a lot of pastors say. What I say back to them is, well, if you don't want to be around sick people, you shouldn't work in a hospital.
That's good. Good comeback. Yes, yes, exactly. Um, so what is the remedy for this?
For that quote.
Or
Uh,
yes.
you so most of us Christians believe, we don't articulate this, but we believe when I become a Christian, things will get better. Life will be smoother. God will protect me from things. After the fire, I did an interesting study of the New Testament. Try it yourself and see how many times Jesus promises to protect us from things. Um, you will be shocked.
Like
Uh,
none?
there are a couple times, like with the disciples, where he says, let these guys go when he's being arrested. But Jesus says almost nothing about protecting us. And we habitually pray for traveling mercies, and I've stopped praying for those things not because it's bad, but because that's what you did with your household gods in Jesus's day. Is you had little deities
Ooh,
that ensured a
ouch.
good harvest and little deities that made you fertile and have kids, and Jesus did not come to be a household god. Um
Hmm.
and so I want to spend my prayer time talking to him and not asking to be taken out of the world. And all who seek to live godly in Christ will be persecuted. Count it all joy when you encounter various trials. That's what the Bible says about suffering. It doesn't say when you become a Christian that everything will go better for you. I don't know where we got that idea.
Well, it does promise greater is he that is in you than he that's in the
Right.
world. So you feel like there's some victory there and
Yeah.
be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah. And well, it's not okay. Victory, we need to redefine victory. Victory is not my circumstances changing to make me more comfortable.
Ooh,
Victory is overcoming victory. Okay, all things work together for good, agathos, which has the connotation of inward goodness or good character. So everything that happens to me, God will work for agathos to produce character in me if I engage it according to his purpose. And his purpose is in the next verse to conform us to the image of Christ. So when I encounter a difficult circumstance, it is not my job to pray myself out of the circumstance. It is not God's job to take me out of the circumstance. Jesus does not prevent anyone from getting sick. He meets people who are sick and heals them. We want him to keep us from getting sick. And it's,
true.
if you ask people what's the most important thing you've learned in your life that's most dear to you about who God is, everyone will recount an episode that happened through suffering. We
Like that
learn,
experiment you did with the class. Tell me
yeah,
when you learned the most from.
we learn, life presses us and we learn from it. That's how we learn. Change is painful and takes lots of energy, and usually we won't change unless there's some external infusion of energy, or it becomes even more painful to stay where I am. So I look at adversity as something, here's an opportunity for me to be formed into the image of Christ if I engage it by that purpose. If I engage adversity with the purpose of making myself more comfortable, that's all I'll get. And I'm
Mm.
not in Christianity to be more comfortable.
Well, and then guess what? God really wants us to grow in our image of him, and he'll just have to do it all over again until we start growing into the image he wants us.
And here's a fun little heaven tidbit on that. When the New Testament talks about human glory as opposed to God's glory, like he'll share his glory with us, it's almost always connected with suffering, provided that we suffer with him in order that we might be glorified with him. And I think in heaven, I think heaven has more dimensions than earth. It's like you look at a two-dimensional painting and your mind makes the third dimension out of the shadows. Earth is two-dimensional and heaven is more. So what does God make those extra dimensions out of? I think the glory dimension in heaven, our presence in it is built out of what we've suffered and sacrificed for Christ. So think of it as Jesus is going to build part of your body out of what you've suffered and sacrificed. The reward is not a crown. The reward is you, and who you become and who you are. And so I look forward to a heaven where there's an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison for the things that I have given for Christ. So suffering isn't fun. We don't go out and say, "Oh, I want to suffer today."
Give me some suffering.
But
Burn my house down.
suffering produces something vital in us, and the New Testament writers knew that and talked about it repeatedly. And 21st century Western culture tries to say that Christians shouldn't suffer, and that is not biblical.
Well, go talk to some of the other countries where Christians are that
Right.
have to worship God underground or something. So what do you say to a Christian who hasn't suffered?
Well,
Particularly,
you got something to look forward to. Actually, what I say is I'm concerned for you because the way you're living somehow is removing your growth opportunities in a systematic way. What's going on?
That's good. That's good. Wow, this could go on forever. You have a plethora of wisdom and answers, but it's time to come to the
Yes.
close. But before we do you have any parting words for our listeners?
Yeah, since we were talking about suffering, there's a fellowship of sufferings that you can have with Jesus. There's part of him, the suffering servant, that only those who've suffered with can relate to. And when you suffer, there's the opportunity to go to Jesus and say, "Jesus, this sucks. I don't like this at all. Where's the time you went through something like this? And what was it like for you?" And you fellowship around your common experience. And that's a gift of knowing him that only comes through facing adversity.
The fellowship of suffering, that is the first time I've had that perspective on.
Mhm.
That is beautiful. That's powerful. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
you're
Now,
welcome.
are all of your books, 21 books, on Amazon?
Yep.
And you're not supposed to promote the book about reading the Bible like a human being, but I can promote it.
Uh-huh.
Just glancing at it, it looks like a very helpful book, especially for someone that is exploring God and what a life with Jesus would be like.
Hmm.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, to my amazing guest, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, belongers, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember you belong. This is Dea Irby with Here Where You Belong podcast. Signing off. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Hear Where You Belong. We hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the beauty of belonging in your own life. Remember, no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. Join us again next time for more insightful conversations and heartwarming stories. Until then, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong.